remembering you missed the recitation of 3 short ayahs or surah when in ruku or koma. So we gave the example before of remembering that you missed surah Fatiha when you're in ruku. Now the example is that you started your namaz, you read Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, but you just, after finishing surah Fatiha, Waladdallin Ameen, you went straight into ruku. And you forgot that you had to read a surah, you've mistaken your number of rakats, you thought it was the third rakat of a farz. Now what do? So again, whilst you're in ruku or you're in koma, before going into sajda, you will go back to the standing position. You will have to recite Surah Fatiha again. Because remember, we just mentioned a few minutes ago, it is wajib to recite Surah Fatiha before the surah. So even though you read Surah Fatiha before and just not a surah now, when you stand up, you're not just going to suffice with the surah. You'll recite Surah Fatiha again. You will recite the surah, whatever surah, and then even though you did ruku before, you will do ruku again. And the reason for this, I've not mentioned it before, is because the tartib, we mentioned this last week, the sequence between the standing and the ruku and the sajda is necessary. So once you went into ruku but you've stood back up, there's an order. So standing, then ruku before sajda. So you will do the ruku again, and then you will finish your namaz as usual. But what will you do at the end? You'll do sajda sahw. Why? Even though I made up the qiraat, I stood back up. Why? Because you've delayed it from its place. That is the answer for that. And it's important to remember this masala and the masala of Surah Fatiha as well. Why? And now I didn't mention. What if a person he remembered when he was in ruku or koma, but he didn't go back. He just completed his namaz as usual and did sajda sahw. So the answer is that his namaz will be done. So I'll repeat that scenario again. That you forgot to read Surah Fatiha, or you forgot to read a surah, and you were in ruku or you were in qiyam. Now we said it'll be better for us to stand back up and recite surah again and recite Surah Fatiha again. But what if a person didn't? He remembered, but despite this, he just continued the namaz as usual and he thought, okay, sajda sahw will suffice for me. So according to the correct opinion, his namaz will be done. But again, there are some scholars, as I've got the quote from Mufti Rashid Ahmad Saab, he's saying that what the books have mentioned, فَعَلَيْهِ, which indicates towards wujub, that it's necessary for you to return back to the standing position. So if you remembered before ruku, if you remembered whilst in ruku or koma, before you went into sajda, that I've missed Surah Fatiha, I've missed Surah out, it will be necessary according to some to return and read the Surah or Surah Fatiha again. But the more correct opinion is, even if that person doesn't go to the standing position, his prayer will still be valid. Why am I mentioning the difference of opinion? I mentioned this to you before, is so we be considerate, we learn this masla properly, so if it ever does occur, we know we should stand up and our prayer is valid according to those who say it is necessary to return.